6:38, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on in to Wednesday, July 3rd, day before Independence Day. Appreciate you spending time with us. And Matthew Hurtt, our Grassroots political analyst, is joining us on the Super Talk 99.7 Newsmaker Hotline. And Matthew, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dan. Looking at these polling numbers you were talking about earlier in these swing states and toss-up states, and it's looking really good for Donald Trump.
Well, it is, and the most important thing, at least to me, there's a few things. Number one is that they are the swing states, and the other part of that is that since the debate, Joe Biden has gone down. Now, remember, and I told folks about this a couple of different times, Van Jones, famed Democrat operative Van Jones, actually said a few days ago, well, let's just wait and see what the polling looks like in some of these battleground states, some of these swing states, and see what it shows. Well, now that we see that the numbers are not good for Joe Biden and they're a lot better for Donald Trump, the calls are growing louder for Joe Biden to step down.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing in even internal Democratic polls. For a year or more, Democrats said that Joe Biden was fit to serve. And what we're seeing in real time is the veil is coming off here, where either all of the reporters, all of the pundits who touted Joe Biden for a year or longer, knew this to be true. They knew these instances. There were glitches in his performance at announcements and other political events. He just had a fundraiser in Arlington last night. And all of these events are now being made more public, and the American people are seeing what's happening. There is only so long that the people can tolerate or accept a narrative from the administration and their apologists in the media. And now millions of Americans who, as you and I have talked about before, are starting to tune in. More people watch this debate. There were 50 million viewers. People are now tuning in to the presidential election. And if this was their introduction to Joe Biden, this is not great for the campaign, and it is certainly not great for their hope in November.
So this is from the New York Post. In the 14 battleground states spotlighted by Open Labs, which also included Colorado, Maine, Minnesota, and Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, Biden lost between 1.7 and 2.4% to Donald Trump compared to the Democrats' pre-debate numbers. Now, this is like inside Democrat polling. So is this more accurate than you would see from because this was leaked. So is this more accurate than, say, your typical New York Times poll?
There are three kinds of polls. There are polls that campaigns release that show they have good numbers. There are polls that are commissioned by news outlets, and they want to be fair and objective, and they want those polls to be accurate. And then there are internal polls that campaigns commission that they don't release to the public, so they actually know what's going on. And for the listeners who say, well, how will these three polls tell us three different things? You can, depending upon the universe that you tinker with, if you're polling more Democrats than Republicans, or you're polling independents, or you're polling in different states, these polls will show a range of data, usually within 3 to 5 points.
Also, by the way, if I can throw in registered voters versus the entire population.
Exactly. And what the universe is, what the demographics are, but because polling is a lot of science, but it's a little bit of art. On election day, how do we know that 18 to 29-year-olds are going to show up? We don't. The voters who show up are 50 and above in large numbers. And so when you look at these polls, you look at what they call the crosstabs. Are 18 to 29-year-olds going to show up at 24% of the entire electorate? It's hard to tell. And so looking at all of those, you tend to get a range of 3 to 5 or 7 points where the poll could be. And what that means is any of these are within the margin of error. And a margin of error in a poll is fine, but a margin of error on election day yields two different results. It's the difference between President Donald Trump and President Hillary Clinton. And so you have to sort of look at these. Again, one poll doesn't tell you much, but a series of polls tells you a story or drives a narrative. And what I'm looking at, particularly on the political polls Twitter handle, they've got all of the swing states, including Virginia, where Trump's up 0.6, and New Mexico, where Trump is up 0.5, all the way up to North Carolina, where he's up 11 points. And this is in those big numbers where Trump is up more than 5 points. That is going to trickle down into contested congressional races, which, I am hesitant to say we're going to see a Tea Party style wave, but we may see wins on election night in districts that the Republican Party was not expecting.
So one of the news stories out there today is that 25 Democrats from the House of Representatives are going to be in the next couple of days calling out Joe Biden, telling him that he needs to resign. I think the Democrats are freaking out. And the reason why they're freaking out is because it will, as you just stated, that's going to impact the down ballot. So if, for example, in the polling that we're talking about, they reported that 40% of voters who backed Joe Biden in 2020 believe that he should drop out. That's 40%. That's a pretty big number. While 55% of swing voters want him off the Democratic ticket, just 29% say that Joe Biden should stay on. So, in other words, if Biden stays on the ticket, then that will impact those down ballot races. And we could be looking at, of course, the Republicans with a stronger majority in the House of Representatives. And this would impact the Senate, too, right?
There's a Democratic candidate for Congress in Virginia Beach. The race 2 years ago, a Republican won the seat. It is the quintessential toss-up seat in Virginia. And the Democratic candidate for Congress in Virginia Beach refused to do a fundraising or campaign event with Joe Biden in the wake of his debate performance. So we're going to see candidates pull away from Joe Biden. What we'll see with voters is a lot of Democrats, if Joe Biden is on the ballot come November, Democrats who would otherwise support him may stay home. So it could depress turnout in these areas. And even in Arlington, where Joe Biden won 80% of the vote in the last presidential election, even our county board candidate is on defense, saying that he supports the president. And so it is affecting jurisdictions and voter areas where Democrats have overwhelming support, where they win elections all the time. And in these critical swing districts, it is really going to make a difference. But these polls don't vote. And so for the listeners and for those who have friends in swing states, places like Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio and Georgia, or if you've got listeners who are on the border with Georgia and Chattanooga, those individuals have to get out and communicate with their neighbors, communicate with their friends, communicate with their social networks to say this isn't enough. The polls aren't what is produced on election day. It's the votes that are counted. So we actually have to take this energy and channel it into productive political activity.
I want to play something for you, Matthew Hurtt, Grassroots political analyst. This made big news last night. As I've always said, once you lose the Waka Waka Flame support, you know that you're in trouble.
All my Joe Biden voters to get out.
So that is Waka Waka Flame, who is some sort of a hip-hop artist, and he actually told the Joe Biden supporters to leave the auditorium where he was playing, which, by the way, I don't agree with at all, because if somebody told Donald Trump supporters to leave an auditorium or a bar or whatever where somebody was playing, I wouldn't agree with that either. People do need to be treated with respect, but putting all that aside, we've seen these rappers for Trump, and Waka Waka Flame apparently is one of the latest, telling Biden supporters to leave the arena. How big of a deal is it to the overall election when people come out like a Waka Waka Flame and espouse their support for Donald Trump?
We have to meet voters where they are, and this is why Taylor Swift, she announced support. In the last presidential election, there was a lot of conservative consternation. These cultural figures do have some say over where, particularly young people, cast their ballot. So what you see outside of concerts is there's an entire nonprofit network that registers voters outside of concerts. I was loosely affiliated with them when I was at Middle Tennessee State University. And what they hope, though they are nonpartisan, what they hope is they are registering people to vote for Democrats. But what we see is if you go into a concert, if you're going to see Taylor Swift or Waka Waka Flame or whomever, and that individual makes a statement, a cultural statement, a political statement, that is going to embed itself into your psyche, and then you'll think about that if you ultimately go out and vote. Now, we know that 18 to 24-year-olds don't vote at a high percentage anyway. However, increasingly, this is a voter block. Even in the last, I think, New York Times Siena poll, Donald Trump is winning 18 to 29-year-olds. Now, he has to mobilize those individuals, and any time you see an ad or you get a mailer or you hear from a cultural figure that you enjoy or respect, that is one more touch. And in the course of a campaign, a candidate or a campaign infrastructure wants to, quote unquote, touch or put their campaign message in front of voters hundreds and hundreds of times. So this is just another touch for a voter who, when he or she is making up his mind when they go to vote, that is one element that they will consider. So
I saw in some of the polling out there, so Kamala Harris is like 2 percentage points behind Donald Trump. Michelle Obama, 50 to 39% over Donald Trump. What do you make of these polls that number one, and I hate to do this, but in a minute or less, what do you make of the polls that show that Kamala Harris is just 2 percentage points behind Donald Trump and the Michelle Obama 50 to 39%, and people are trying to get Michelle Obama apparently to jump into the race?
These are all hypothetical matchups. I don't see a scenario where Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket. She is too universally disliked, even among her own party. And Michelle Obama has said a number of times that she is not interested in running for public office. She hated her time in the White House with her husband, and this is not something I think that she would pursue. However, if there's a situation come August where the convention, the Dems have their convention, and she feels this national pressure to step out. That is a hypothetical political science class conversation, and I'm not willing to have that yet with you, Dan.
All right, 6:50, Nashville's Morning News. Matthew, how can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Hurtt, MattheWHurtt.
All right, have a great July 4th, and probably talk to you next week, and enjoy the holiday.